Welcome to Lessons in Attachment. This is the podcast that helps you to break free from the relationship struggles that so many of us face, using personal experiences and inspiring lessons to show you that you can change and break free from anxious and/or avoidant patterns. This episode today, we actually are diving into quite a different topic for this podcast, which I'm really, really excited about. So, we have a guest expert today, Kat Taiberg, and she is talking to us about how your cycle, your menstrual cycle, can actually help and hinder your lifestyle, your daily habits, how you think, how you feel, and of course, it wouldn't be lessons in attachment if I didn't bring in how it can also impact your relationships and your dating. As you're going to hear, Kat talks about a concept using the seasons that has helped me now for years. So I'm really excited to bring that to you as well. Just to say, this is our first episode using YouTube podcasts. So there are actually over 100 episodes of Lessons in Attachment that you can download, you can explore, choose the topics that suit your needs at the moment. So if you relate to having an anxious, primarily attachment style, then do check out Lessons in Attachment because there is a lot of information there waiting for you to dive in. Kat, hello.
Hello, Carly.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
I honestly, I really appreciate it. I know like we had to hit record because I feel like there is so much to talk about. But I think just first of all, just to give you a bit of space to introduce you to people that are listening, I just wanted to say, so like I was just saying, I've listened to your podcast. I've been following you now for a little while. I know that we found each other in kind of like a joint membership, and there's so many things that I really love. I love that today we are diving into the menstrual cycle, so I'll hold off on that because we haven't spoken about that here. But I've written down what you have as your Instagram bio currently,
Mm,
and you've said that you're helping people to create a strong mindset to endure the roller coaster of life.
yes.
I can't tell you how much this, what's the word, just relates, resonates, all of the things.
Yeah.
So to have you here and to read that, I wanted to say that I think it's really inspiring. I know you help people in so many different ways. But yeah, I just wanted
Thank
to
you.
say that. So you tell me what that means to you. You can tell us what you do. This is your space. Go for it.
Thank you so much. It's so great to be recognized in that way because I've actually recently changed that bio because I've been for so long. This is like story of my 2024 is like, how do I put into some simple words what I do? Because I have so many different talents, so different modalities. Like what is the common theme? And it's all just really boils down to developing a strong mindset. So not just a healthy mindset. I'm not just about like, hey, let's be positive. Woo. No, like that's just not life. So it's about creating a strong mindset so that you can really endure the good and the bad, the roller coaster, the ego deaths, the rebirths, the pivots, the challenges, all of it, so that you can come out of it and be like, okay, I've gone through hardship before. I can do this again. And it's just going to get easier the more times I move through it, because that's life.
Hmm.
Like,
I
it's
couldn't
just,
couldn't agree more.
yeah, it's always going to continue. And I feel like sometimes in the personal development world, people make it out to be like, oh, if you do this work with me, you'll be healed and you'll be good forever. And that's just not the truth because life is cyclical. So I'm glad we're going to be talking about the menstrual cycle because that just relates to everything too. But life is cyclical. We have the ups, we have the downs. We're going to be in those deep dives in what I like to call being in the mud of like the thick of it all and being like, oh my God, I can't endure this anymore. But then like rising back up and then we're going to be at the top, but then we're going to have to go back down. It's just this roller coaster.
Absolutely. And it's reminding me of a conversation that I had recently inside the membership that I run, I was telling you about. And there was a conversation about, oh, but when I'm in a secure relationship, is it going to be boring? Because so it's a lot of insecurity, as you know, and there's a lot of highs and lows because it's the anxious and the avoidant, and it's that chemistry up, down, anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
sadness. Um, and it was literally like, but is it going to be boring in a secure relationship or a healthier
Mm.
relationship? I was like, no, because you're still going to be living life, and life is never going to be boring. You're still going to be on roller coasters. You're still going to have other issues coming up. You and your healthier partner are still going to have conflicts and all those things because that's life. You don't need an anxious and avoidant relationship to have highs and
Yeah.
lows in life.
Yeah, that's so true, hey. But it's so fascinating, like talking about the anxious and avoidant, and even through the work that I do with my clients in coaching, like seeing the dynamics play out and those attractions. And especially, if we watched our parents grow up like that and being in the anxious, avoidant kind of relationships and the unhealthiness, like how we just recreate that because we think that that's normal. And then, yeah, thinking like, oh, well, if I'm in a secure relationship, it's going to be boring. But that's so not true.
It's just not true. Yeah. I really believe it's just not true. It's a thought, it's a fear that people have. And the reality is, life's always messy. It's always a roller coaster, right?
Yeah, it is.
It's
Life is
just,
a
I
roller
think it's,
coaster.
yeah. And I think it's just about, can those ups and downs be a bit more of a flow? Can I bring myself up
Yes.
quicker and maybe not go as high or whatever it is? But it's always, like you say, up and down,
Yeah. I
joy and
actually read
pain.
I read something really interesting in a book I'm currently reading. So I'm reading a book called The Kabbalion, which is kind of like on the Hermetic principles. So it's very occult kind of knowledge. I love woo-woo stuff. Like I love quantum energy, spirituality, all the things. So I'm reading this book, and one of the laws, and it's was it the law of polarity or rhythm? I can't remember exactly what it was
It's
called, but it
polarity,
basically,
isn't it?
yeah, like the
Yeah.
having both ends. And
Yes.
in there, it said in order to feel the true highs, you need to be able to feel the true lows as well.
Yeah.
And I
Heard
think
that.
it's so beautiful if we can learn to be at both ends of the pendulum, right?
Mhm.
And manage it. Because I do believe that sometimes if we bring ourselves just into the pendulum swing being smaller and just having that smaller range of emotions, you're never going to be able to tap into that pure bliss and pure joy if you don't know how to be in the mud, as I
Mhm.
like to call it. And
Mhm.
at the same time, it is like learning to navigate it so that we don't sit in the mud for like months at end and throw ourselves a pity party. Like,
Yes.
you
Yeah.
know?
But it's true. I feel like we're often aiming for that happiness, and we're still going to have to sometimes feel sad, and that might be in the same day. You can feel happy and
Yeah.
sad in the same day, you know. So
Yes.
I'm really curious in terms of the menstrual cycle that we're talking about today. What do you, even just this kind of conversation, what role do you see the awareness of our menstrual cycle, the role that it plays in our moods, our lives, our well-being, our relationships? What role do you see it having?
I believe it's plays a huge role for women, especially if you're still in your menstruating years, if you're experiencing a regular cycle, even if you're experiencing an irregular cycle. But it does span so much further because as women, we're just so cyclical that even if we're post menopause, we still experience it. And understanding and making sense of your cycle and the fluctuations of that roller coaster, because it is a hormonal roller coaster that we go through during the different phases. So knowing what to expect during what phases gives us, first of all, confidence in ourselves, knowing that, oh, okay, I'm in this phase of my cycle. This is my inner season. I know that generally this is how I show up. And it just gives that security of knowing what to expect instead of, making it sound like, oh my God, you're a crazy, crazy woman for, I don't know, having emotions and feeling like this right now. So learning to understand the seasons, what they mean, and what they're actually teaching us can help us navigate that hormonal roller coaster that we experience as a woman.
I have to tell you before you dive in and explain to us the seasons that the understanding the seasons was genuinely life-changing for me. I still refer to it now. I was having a conversation with someone really recently. I can't think who it was, but they hadn't heard of that concept.
Yeah.
And again, they were like, "Oh my God, it's so true." And I know I'm kind of, if you haven't heard of it, I'm teasing a little bit. But it was genuinely life-changing for me. So as we share this, I'm excited to
I love that.
explain kind of how life-changing it can be. So tell us about the seasons.
Oh, the seasons. First of all, I just want to say I love that you know about it, because I love seeing that it is becoming more common knowledge and more women know about it. That just makes me so happy, because it's such ancestral wisdom that has been taken from us for so long, and it's nice to see women reclaim it. So yeah, it just makes me so happy.
I love that. I love that.
And there's so different ways that we can break the cycle into the 4 phases that it has. And I prefer the seasonal approach because it's just the easiest way for people to understand and make sense of it if they're new to it. So just like the seasons, there we have a spring, we have a summer, we have an autumn, and we have a winter. And I like to actually start with the spring just because of the way that the energies shift. It kind of makes sense to come full circle and end with winter, even though technically our cycle starts with a winter, because day one, which is the first day of our full bleed, so not just spotting, but like a full bleed, that is marks day one of our cycle, which marks the beginning of our inner winter. So it would technically make sense to start there, but just energetically speaking, I like to start with inner spring.
Yeah.
So we're gonna go there first. Inner spring, it's around day 7 till about day 14 of our cycle is when we can tap into our spring energy. Hormonally, what's happening at that point is our estrogen is starting to rise, and our estrogen is our hormone that is creative and fun. It's extroverted. So we kind of, if we even think about it, like once our period is over, we feel this like new energy, right? We're like, oh, all right, I'm ready to go and I put myself out there. I'm ready to be social. I'm ready to have fun. So it's that same energy. I'm sure you can relate to this in regards to, being in Europe. Like I live in Canada. We have the 4 seasons. And in spring, like once the snow melts here in Canada and like the sun comes out, I'm like, yes, here I am, world. Watch me.
Mhm. Honestly, here at the moment, the conversation is, I mean, we don't have much spring right now, but the conversation is, it's coming, like spring is coming
Yeah.
finally. And you can see
Yeah.
that people are getting ready for it, yeah. So I totally get that.
So it's that same energy in our spring of our cycle. And the predominant things that we can tap into, the strengths of that phase is creativity. So really kind of taking some time and being creative in whatever way that feels to you, whether it is that you run a business and you want to be creative in your new offers or come up with new things. Maybe it's in your relationship. Like, how can you be creative and do something fun, something that you haven't done before, trying something new for the first time in your relationship? Just any way that you like to be creative and trying new things, this is the phase to do it. It's really the main strength of that phase. And also it's starting to be more extroverted. So putting yourself out there, catching up with your friends. I'm keeping it really simple here. And then I do also like to, because I like polarity, there's the good and the bad. So the strength is the creativity, the rise of energy and feeling extroverted. Also with estrogen rising, we actually start to like have more, what's the word? Like spark to us or glow to us. It's just estrogen does that to women. So it's like really you kind of start to probably want to wear maybe more cute outfits and stuff like that. When in a winter you might have just been like sweatpants, hoodies, that kind of stuff. So it's really kind of strutting your stuff in a way. But then the shadow of inner spring, which I love talking about because women can so often relate to it, it's actually overwhelm because we come out of our inner winter and we're like, oh my God, I have this energy again. And then we kind of jump out of the door too fast, too soon, and like try to do all the things and like, and then we end up being overwhelmed because we weren't actually ready to do all the things yet.
Mm.
So it's learning to pace yourself in your inner spring.
We kind of crash a little bit.
Exactly. Because
Yeah.
if you try to do too much too soon, you crash and then you don't really get to tap into the full beauty of your inner summer, your ovulation phase.
Okay. And when is this in your cycle?
It's day 7 till about day 14.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you
So
start
that's
getting the spring in your step a little bit around then.
exactly. But try not to overwhelm yourself, because overwhelm is like the favorite flavor of that phase. Like so often when I talk to my clients and they're like, oh my God, I'm feeling so overwhelmed. Like all the things I have to do. I'm like, where are you at in your cycle? They're like, oh, I'm on like day 10. I'm like, slow
Interesting.
down.
Okay, that's really interesting. Because I'm thinking as well, I wonder if uh, thinking of people in relationships, or maybe if you're dating, is this the phase where you go on 10 dates in a week and then you're like, oh, it's rubbish because you crashed and
Yeah.
burned?
You kind of, yeah, I would rather recommend going for 10 days a week when you're in your inner summer. But
Okay,
you may feel like you could in your inner
right.
spring.
Okay, okay.
So this is kind of like maybe a little bit less, but starting to put yourself out there. Maybe you're thinking more of like fun ways that you can engage with yourself and fuel your own cup. And then in your inner summer, freaking all guns blazing, 10 dates a week, go for it kind of thing.
When I was single, I'm sure I was terrible for this. I'm sure many people can relate. I was like a serial deleter of dating apps. So like I'd delete them,
Mm-hmm.
download them, delete them, download them. And I remember saying it's related to my cycle. Like when
Yeah.
I want that off my phone,
Yep.
out of my energy. And then when I was like, oh, maybe I can download the apps again.
Yeah, you probably would have like downloaded them again in your inner spring because it's like that
Yes.
estrogen is coming back and you're like, oh, woohoo, oh, let's go.
That's it. Yeah, that's so yeah, absolutely. It's really bringing all the memories back. But yeah,
I
absolutely.
love that. That's
Yeah.
amazing. And yeah, you'll notice. So technically, we have two what are energetically more masculine phases of our cycle and two more feminine. So masculine being that outward focused energy where we are more focused on being with other people, being social, being extroverted. And spring and summer are those two phases. And then the more introverted, more feminine, slower periods are autumn and winter. So I feel like that's kind of good to mention here right now as well. And after spring, we move into inner summer, which is our ovulation phase. So it's around, and it has kind of that aftermath of ovulation. So it's day 14 till about day 2021 is when you have that height of your energy. And if we think about summer, like what do we do in summer? We do all the things because like summer is precious, right? The sun is shining. We have all the energy. We're like going to all the parties and social events, all the dates. We have adventures. We're going on trips. We're
Mhm.
doing everything, like everything. And that's exactly what happens in your inner summer of your menstrual phase, your ovulation phase. It's kind of like the superwoman phase where you can do it all.
So you can
You
actually do it
literally,
all here.
yes, I'll get to the shadow in a
Okay.
moment because there is a shadow as well.
Ahead of myself.
But there is like this is the phase where you can do it all. It is Wonder Woman phase, and you have this glow, like your estrogen is at your peak, your libido is spiked. This is really the time when you are single to go out on dates. And you'll notice that men are probably more attracted to you during that time because they, even if it's not, obvious, it's not like you have a freaking sign on your forehead saying like, hey, I'm ovulated, I'm fertile, like you, let's go. It's not like that, but there is that animalisticness about men. They can smell it somehow in us. Like I notice it with my husband when I'm ovulating. I don't even need to be tracking my cycle to know when I'm ovulated because suddenly he's like, oh, just like more hands on.
That's so interesting, isn't it?
It's
Okay. Yes,
fascinating.
it is. It really is. And yeah, in the kind of winter stages and things, when you talk about that, I have like some experiences of that in relationship as well. So
Mm,
in summer, you've probably got more energy, feeling and perhaps literally being
yes.
having that attraction with people.
Yeah.
Um, And it's not even through, it's just naturally, like your husband just knows.
Yeah.
Not knows, but
It's,
it's just there.
yeah, his body, his animalistic body just knows.
Wow.
It's
So,
there.
yeah, so interesting. It's fascinating.
It really is. And the other thing, which why dating is so great during this phase, is the way that our brain hemispheres are balanced and the way that our hormones and everything are working, we're actually primed for really great communication skills at that time. So going out on dates, you'll be able to speak more eloquently. You'll be able to ask for what you want. You'll be able to just have better conversations. So even I always say, if someone has a job and they've been wanting to ask for a pay rise, do it in your ovulation phase, because you'll have the skills to portray what you need in a more eloquent way so that the person that you're sharing it with receives it better.
Hmm. I
It's a
think
great time to have tough conversations.
yeah, that I think is great, a great tip, great advice. Because
Yeah,
self-expression is something I know many of the listeners of this podcast can really struggle with. Communication,
yeah,
when to express, how to, and it's just maybe it is just that, just a little bit of medicine almost to help you along, isn't it?
yeah. It totally is. And also, if you are an entrepreneur, this is the time when I generally try to schedule my like speaking arrangements,
Okay.
being on other people's podcasts, etc. I just noticed that things run more smoothly. Right now, I'm actually in my inner spring, but I can still feel that estrogen rise. So sometimes, it's not everything happens ideally.
Yeah, yeah.
And yet, how can we still utilize this to our best abilities? So this is the knowledge that really can make a difference. And knowing that, okay, there's something that bothers me about my relationship, something that maybe comes up in your inner autumn, which we'll get to in a moment, but then can you keep it and then have that conversation in your inner summer when you're ovulating so that it can be more well received?
Hmm.
Because in your inner autumn, if you start to go at it, it's probably not going to end well, because that's the phase where you're a little bit more snappy and, less tolerance and stuff.
Hmm.
And in your inner summer, you can let things slide a bit more, and it's just perfect for these kind of conversations.
And then you can just enjoy it.
Yeah,
Enjoy the
exactly. And you
summer
just
once you have it.
exactly just go and have fun. The shadow of this phase is though that you can forget about yourself, because it's so outward focused, so extroverted and energetically. Sometimes we end up doing everything for everyone else and we forget about ourselves. So self-care can sometimes be kind of pushed to the back
Mm.
when you're in your inner summer. So then it's like really remembering, like, okay, I may want to do all these things with all these people and for everyone else, and be super social and just be a Wonder Woman. And how can I still make sure that I look after myself at the same time?
Okay.
Because then otherwise you again may burn out. Once, if I forget, once I've gone through all 4 seasons, can you remind me that if we experience more of the shadows, to kind of come back to like, where do we go to look why we're experiencing them? Because it will make more sense once I've gone through all 4 of
Okay.
them. Now
Making.
we're moving. Yeah, I see you making a note. That's smart.
Although, oh my God, I have to like write notes. I'm like this even with if I'm on calls with clients, it's just notes everywhere.
I'm the same. I'm the same. And
Don't
coming
always
back to
do
it,
anything with them, but
it's almost just like like the action of writing it down somehow. Yeah. I'm,
honestly,
I'm
yeah,
pretty sure there's research about it that, like when you actually write things down, it does help you remember.
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Let's move into inner autumn. For the longest time, this was my favorite phase because of the controversy about it. And
Interesting. Okay.
yeah, and learning about like what it truly meant. I was like, wow, this is such a powerful phase. Because if we think about it, this is, day 21 till about day 28 of our cycle. So it's that PMS phase, and it's often the most hated phase for a lot of women. But once I started to learn about menstrual cycle awareness and the seasons and even the archetypes that go into all the four seasons, I was like, wow, there is so much power in our inner autumn. So I'm really excited to talk about the inner autumn, and I'm probably going to bring in the archetype as well in here, just because I feel like it drives it home. So this is the first phase when we start to slow down. So we've had the two masculine phases, spring and summer, where we're more extroverted. So now things are starting to take a little bit of a change in pace. It's starting to be a bit more introverted, a bit more feminine. Again, if we think about autumn, we've had fun. Summer has been amazing, but I don't know about you. When it gets to autumn and summer has been full on, I'm like, oh, thank God I can slow down. So it has that energy if you allow it to be.
Yeah, okay. If you
Because
allow
so
it.
often we think we need to be our inner summer woman all cycle long, because that's just what society has engraved into us. So then we resist the slowing down. We resist the medicine that is in that slowing down and being more discerning. And this is something I so often work with my clients, is the like guilt of like feeling like you're not doing enough if you're slowing down.
Mhm.
So this is the phase where we start to get to slow down. There's kind of a few things that we get to tap into here. There's a little bit of like finishing things up so that we can prepare for winter. Again, if we think about the seasons, we use autumn to get things ready, to kind of clean up whatever needs to be cleaned up so that when winter comes around, we just get to rest and hibernate. So this is the season to do that. It's the season to prepare, to finish it, close up any loose ends, so we can still have a lot of energy in this phase, but it's different kind of energy. It's not so much like outward focused, but it's more like, okay, where do I need to still clean up? Like this is often a phase where we tend to clean the house, like clean the closet, like get rid of all the things we don't wear or use anymore. So it's really that cleanup energy that we get to tap into, which is one of the strengths. And then it's the discernment piece. So this is where I want to bring in the archetype of the wild woman, because she's the archetype of inner autumn. And anything that you have been letting slip for the rest of your cycle, where you kind of, in your inner summer, where you're just like a bit more lenient and you're like, oh, whatever, yeah, that kind of bothers me, but I can handle it. Your wild woman, make sure you get rid of whatever doesn't serve you.
So
So
anything you're
she,
holding on to.
exactly, that you've been carrying that actually bothers you, that isn't serving you, she's like, look at this, like deal with this. So this is why we can become snappy, because our tolerance level changes. And if we know that about ourselves, we can accept it, be like, oh, okay, so this is actually something that is bothering me. Okay, maybe I should take a look at it. Can I handle it on my own? Okay, no, I need to have some tough conversations. Can I like get a little bit more clarity in my inner winter and then have the conversations next summer? But just like taking note of the things that are bothering you. And this is really powerful knowledge if you're in a relationship, because this is the time when you could be a bit more snappy to your partner. And then again, teaching your partner about your phases, he can be like, oh, okay, you're just in that phase. Okay. And just there's more acceptance.
Yeah. Do you know, I have to, yeah, because I think I would say even when we were like early in our dating phase, or maybe when I was certainly starting to get a bit more comfortable with my mood,
Mm-hmm.
let's say, there was certainly like clockwork, me getting insecure
Right.
and literally the next day going into winter, starting my period, like it was I don't know why you forget in the moment sometimes, like
Yeah.
you can't see it, but that was really a lot of my insecurities come up around autumn. So it's interesting when you were
Yes.
saying some people hate this stage because it's such a the feeling of that. Um, but yeah, I'd get really insecure, couldn't hold it in, snap.
Mm-hmm.
I have to
Mm-hmm.
say, he didn't say it to me at the time, but when I would say the next day, oh, guess what? He'd be like, I did think it. And he used to say, because he's got a sister and his mum, so he just said, like, I just know, like, he's like, I know,
Yeah.
I've seen it. And that was refreshing in itself,
Yeah.
to normalize it and things like
Yeah.
that. Not that I'm not saying it's okay that I was snappy and insecure, but I
Yeah.
was. And yeah, it's just, we can laugh about it, but it was like clockwork.
Yeah.
And it's so
It
real. The
is.
insecurity was so real suddenly.
And the other thing is, so there's kind of two archetypes of in the inner autumn. There is the wild woman, and then I'm so glad you're bringing this up because the second one is the inner critic.
Yes,
So
yes. Even like if I think of
insecurities
my
come up.
business, yeah.
Exactly. I noticed this myself as well because, we all have our shadows. We all have the things we're working through. My insecurities, my inner critic definitely comes up in this phase. It's also when I start to compare myself or feel like, oh, I'm not doing enough, all those things. It happens in this phase. So again, knowing this about you and knowing that you're heading into this phase can bring acceptance and just be like, oh, okay, like I know that this is why I'm feeling this way right now. It's going to pass. It's going to be okay. The other thing is, so the way that we can work with our inner critic is instead of kind of ignoring it and being like, oh, I don't want to deal with you, instead of snapping, kind of taking note of like, what is it actually, what's coming to the surface here? What is it that's bothering me? What am I feeling insecure about? What is this inner voice telling me? Make note of it. Tell your inner critic, hey, thanks for pointing this out. I appreciate your input, but I'm not going to deal with you right now. I have something else I need to deal with, but make a note of it. And then you get to come and revisit this in your inner winter when you have clarity.
Yeah, do
So
you know that
it's,
makes a lot of sense because something that when I first discovered this, and I used to think when it was autumn, I'd be like, I know it's not worth challenging my inner critic. I
yeah,
can't, I can't beat it.
yeah. And you can't. It's just, it's learning to live with it. So learning to
Yeah.
be like, oh, okay, here you are again. Well, thanks for your input. I appreciate it. Because ultimately it does serve a role and it is ultimately wanting to protect you and keep you safe, etc. But it's like you can't fight against it. So ignoring it or like screaming at it, whatever, that it just doesn't work. So it's being like, okay, thanks for your input. I appreciate it. I see where you're coming from, but I'm just going to deal with something else right now.
Mhm.
So that's the shadow, is the inner critic and learning to manage it. So really learning to understand the wild woman who is, she knows what she wants. She knows what her boundaries are, and she's not afraid to ask for it. So then again, if we can accept that in ourselves and be like, oh, I'm not a bitch, excuse my language, but that's what we often get called in this
Yeah.
phase. I'm actually, it's just very discerning and I have strong boundaries in this phase. And I appreciate that.
Okay. So our inner bitch comes out
Yeah.
in the
Yeah. But she
positive
wants the
sense.
best for you.
Yeah.
Because she's like, oh my God, you've just been spending these last two phases of your cycle doing everything for everyone else and being super extrovert and you've forgotten about yourself. So let's freaking deal with ourselves and take a break. Okay.
It's so powerful.
Yeah. And that's why I feel like once you can make friends with your wild woman, with your inner critic, there's so much power in this phase. Yes.
Why do we forget? I always feel like I forget though, like every month. Is it just like not recording it or something, do you think? I've never been good at
Yeah.
recording.
Yeah.
Been good.
That's it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I teach as well, is not just tracking when your period is, but actually tracking your different moods and how you feel during the different phases. Because you'll start to also notice like your own days. Like, yeah, I'm giving you, day 14 to whatever, 21 to 28. Those are archetypal days. For you, it could be different.
Hmm.
You just know. But once you start to track your own kind of feelings, and I like to refer to it using the four bodies: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual, and just checking in with the four bodies on a daily basis and noting where you're at in your cycle.
I love that
Super
anyway.
powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a
I
great
actually have
idea.
a free course. Maybe I'll send you the link to it.
Yeah,
And you
do.
can put it
I
in the
have to
show
take the
notes.
membership and the show notes.
Yeah. And it teaches around how to track using a written tracker when you're first new to menstrual cycle awareness, because there's so much knowledge in our cycle, and learning kind of where it's at for you. It, first of all, it normalizes it and it gives you intel on what to expect when.
Love it. Okay, that's great. Yeah, definitely send me that.
Yeah. And a final piece, the inner winter. just bringing it all full circle. This is my new favorite phase because I'm so obsessed currently with everything witchy, intuition, spiritual. This phase holds that. It's the time when we really are most at home with ourselves, when kind of everything else falls off. We're not really riding a big emotional roller coaster because hormonal roller coaster because we're at baseline with our hormones. So both progesterone and estrogen have dropped to the lowest. So we're just us. It's like this clean slate of homecoming. And I really, once I start working with my clients around this and teach them about this, they start to notice it. It's kind of like you said, that the few days before your period and it's being snappy, etc. And then your period comes in. It's just this like, oh,
Yeah, that's true.
I've arrived. I'm back. This is me. And it's the phase, the season where you really get to tune inwards and you get to connect with yourself.
Yeah, and I guess like what's coming up for me is you have to this is where I can't help but what comes through my mind is this is when I realize we live in a man's world. We
Yes.
work on a man's schedule,
Yeah.
So you have to be really willing
Yeah.
to lean into that, right? The task that I'm able, especially that first day of your period. I remember one of my goals used to be when I work for myself, if I don't want to work that first day of my period, I
Yeah.
won't. That was
Yeah.
like a huge goal for me because
Yeah.
we're supposed to have that day off, I'm sure of it.
Yeah, no, I'm a big advocate for it. I call it my menstrual retreat or my menstrual cave time. And last week, I've had some like challenging times with just things happening in my life. So, my menstrual cycle, first of all, I know that when I've been stressed, I'm going to get cramps and it's going to force me to slow down because I've been going so much and because I've been so
Yeah.
stressed. So last cycle, which was literally last week for me, when my first day came, boom, like it forced me to slow down. I don't often get really bad cramps, but this time I got really bad cramps. I felt nauseous. I literally remember I had an important meeting that I had to attend that morning and I had to like ask her like can I sit down because I just felt like sweat drenching and just nausea and everything and I was like, "Oh my God, if my body is ever communicating to me, this is it."
Hmm.
So it was, and again, I know it because I've been tracking my cycle. I know if I've had a stressful autumn, my winter is going to be more intense and it's really going to force me to slow down. So I did. I came home from that meeting and I cleared the rest of my day and I just napped and did nothing. And within my first nap, which was ended up being a 2-hour nap, the cramps were gone.
Because this is it, isn't it? I've had it where, like, I know how much that's not an exaggeration. I've had it where I've had to leave work. Um, I would say, like, in my lifetime, there's been like, I don't know, 5 to 7 times where it's to the point where I'm on the bathroom floor. And
Yeah.
you're right, it's like slow down, like I'll make you slow
Yeah.
down.
Yeah, exactly. It's literally our body forcing us to slow down. If we've been thinking that, oh, I can be Wonder Woman, I can be ovulation woman, all cycle long, menstruation's gonna be like, no, you can't. You're a woman. You're cyclical. You need to rest. You need to come home to yourself.
Hmm.
And there's so much beauty once you allow that. Once you allow yourself to slow down and just be and tap into pleasure. And I'm not talking about sexual pleasure. You can do that as well. It helps with cramps. But I'm talking about just sitting and having a nice cup of tea, reading a book, looking at the clouds, being in nature for a slow walk, just that good old fashioned pleasure, whatever it is for you. If you can give yourself that during this phase, it's truly like just start to notice all the gold that starts to drop in because
Mm.
you're the most intuitive at this phase of your cycle. So you'll suddenly receive clarity about what's happening. The things that were bothering you in your inner autumn, now you get to be like, well, what exactly about it is bothering me? Is it the truth? Is there something else here? What do I need to take into consideration? It's just all lands, and you really get to just power up so that then when your inner spring comes, you get to put yourself out there. It's also a very creative phase, but it's more like introverted creativeness. So more like writing.
That's what I was feeling. I was literally thinking, is this a time for like journaling, meditating
Yes.
then?
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Journaling, meditating, so great for this phase. I also have 7 journal prompts. I could share those with you as well, so you can add
Yes,
them
yes, send
into
it all.
that are for the menstrual phase. And I've used them so often, and the clarity that drops in, because I think it's prompt number 5, where it's just like free write for 3 pages.
Okay.
Magic drops.
Do you think here as well is, and it's not like in a critical way, but sometimes I feel like I think it's winter that I might have a bit of a day of just feeling sorry for myself.
Mm,
Like,
yeah.
yeah, it's tough. Yeah. And if someone says, "You okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm okay." Like,
Yeah, I
oh,
think
I'm
it's
not
probably that
okay.
late
Yeah.
autumn, early winter, just that time of
Yeah,
being
but
like,
it
oh,
doesn't feel like critical. It just feels like maybe it's just needing a little bit of looking after, needing a bit of love
yeah,
and just being like, I don't know, walking slower, like
exactly.
life's hard today.
Yeah, it's such a thing. Oh my God. So I have a really beautiful dog walking trail right from my house, and part of it is like an uphill part. In my inner summer, I basically run up that thing. In my inner winter, it's like, oh, this is the biggest mountain I've climbed my
Yeah.
whole life.
That maybe we need that, isn't it? Maybe we just need that attention from ourselves, from others, whatever it might be. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And this is if you can ask your partner, so if you're in a loving relationship, to take care of you during those 1 or 2 days, especially at the beginning. It's really beautiful. Like I now with my husband, he knows like, oh, he'll probably go and walk the dog instead of me. He'll go and cook like that. It's just that allowing yourself to be looked after during this phase, during those first few days,
Yeah.
especially.
I've
So
seen
good.
maybe on like Instagram or someone, I don't know who. I've definitely seen someone be like, "Oh, he knows that I'm due on my period today or something." And her partner bought her like, I don't know, whatever she needed, chocolate, something just to
Yes.
soothe her. So yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's a bonus, right? If you can
It
communicate
totally
that and
is.
it gets acted on. So I love that.
It's beautiful. And that's why it's like so nice when you can start to teach your partner this. And what I've actually learned through my work, which is so crazy to admit, men are more open to this knowledge than a lot of women.
Do you think? Are they open
Yeah.
to it more? I thought you were gonna say that
Yeah.
they're open to learning about it, but you think they're open to it more?
To even accept it. And I think it comes back to the whole thing of like us living in a men's world. Men want to pleasure women. They want to make us happy. Like a really healthy man will, like a secure man, will want to look after you, will take care of you. And he wants to understand you. He wants to make sense of why you are the way you are. So
Mm.
men love learning about this because then they know what to expect from their partners. And yet, so many women who have that resistance to it, being like, no, I can just be my inner summer woman all month long. It's wild.
Mm. And maybe this kind of discussion as well can help with even understanding, yeah, why you might be a bit more snappy. And because another thing I've heard, I think somebody asked me a question around feeling less attracted to
Hmm.
their partner, or was it, I can't remember what they said. It was on like an Instagram question. They either said like they're less attracted or they feel more inclined like it's not the right relationship for them around that time. They
So
question,
that's
that's it,
normally
they
inner
question it
autumn.
more. Yeah, they question
Inner, yeah. So the inner autumn is that discernment energy of the wild woman. So it is actually a lot of women start to question their relationships during that time. And interestingly enough, the archetype of the wild woman, if we bring it to the life phases of women, it's kind of that perimenopausal, menopausal years, and that's where most marriages break up.
Interesting.
Because that archetype is like, oh my God, my whole life I've been doing this, maybe for the kids, maybe for whatever reason. And then they're like, I've had enough. This is it.
But did that
So it's,
mean though that if they're questioning the relationship in autumn, that they should be looking at that, or it is just
yeah,
you're more
it
inclined to feel that way?
you're more inclined to feel that way. But remember kind of what I said of like taking note of the things that bother you. So then bringing it into your inner winter and being like, well, am I actually unhappy in this relationship, or was it just
Got you.
because the clarity will drop in your inner winter, and you can use it in your journaling, and then also like be like, okay, well, what about the relationship is it that I'm not happy with? Is it something we can work on?
Yeah.
And then bringing that into your ovulation phase
Yes.
where you can
Yeah.
talk about it. Boom.
Okay. And do you know the other thing about all of this that I guess struggle to get my head round a bit is that this is every month.
Yes.
We're not talking about the seasons in terms of a year.
Yeah.
This is what you get a short time of summer.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I guess actually if we look at it your way, it's all got beauty in it actually.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that's what I need to hold on to because I think my story that I've always told myself is God, we only get a short time of summer, but actually, if
Yeah.
we can see the beauty in the others
Yes.
and act on, I think that's my thing is can I can I lean into slowing
Yes.
down? That's
Because
definitely the
yeah,
challenge.
it is a challenge. The more you'll be able to do it, the more you'll start to recognize the power of it. Because if we think about it, the world can't be in summer all year long. We can't always be in that energy. It's just not sustainable. Like even men need to slow down sometimes, and that's where the outer seasons really affect them more. And life seasons, there's seasons in everything. Everything. It's sick. Everything is cyclical. That's another like thing I love to teach on, like everything. But it's like really learning to understand that we can't expect ourselves to be in that productive summer mode because it's just not sustainable.
Hmm.
Everything goes through a death and rebirth cycle. And how cool is it that we go through that every month? Like we have every
I
month a
like
little
that.
retreat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like engraved into us. Amazing.
It's just that reframe, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you were saying about what you said if we experience more of the shadows.
Yes. Thank you for bringing me back to this. So this is actually a really great way to look at this is if we were to look at it as a circle, and there's the 4 quarters. So we've got all the seasons in 1 quarter. So if you're experiencing shadows, for instance, in your inner autumn, what's opposite of that? It's inner summer. So then asking yourself where, not in a, oh, sorry, inner spring. So the overwhelm, where am I trying to do too much too soon and expend all my energy? And then by the time in a summer ends and I get to inner autumn, I crash, I have PMS, I have all these issues. What if I look at my inner spring, was I trying to do too much too soon?
Mm.
So it's like kind of like if we think about like, you know, just not like running really out the doors without taking any consideration about whether it's right or wrong. So that's often like if we look at having issues in our inner autumn, then if we look at winter, if we have a lot of pain, for instance, in the menstrual cycle, look at in a summer. Are you doing too much for everyone else and forgetting about your self-care in your inner summer? Because if you are, you're going to pay for it in your inner winter.
Okay.
So it's always looking at the opposite. And then the same thing in your inner summer. If you don't have any energy in your inner summer, and if you're like, oh, I don't know, this Catwoman was like telling me that I'm like Wonder Woman, I'm meant to be doing all these things, but I have no energy. I'm burnt out and I want to do anything in my inner summer. How are you spending your inner winter? Are you forcing yourself to be productive? Or are you actually allowing yourself to slow down?
So good. It's so good.
And then same with inner spring. If you are constantly overwhelmed in your inner spring, how are you spending your inner autumn? Are you taking the time to slow down, to be discerning what's working, what's not working? Are you allowing yourself to have conversations with your inner critic, or are you trying to fight it? Like just always looking at that opposite one and being like, how am I spending that season?
Mm.
Yeah.
Honestly, I genuinely think it can be life-changing, this information, and especially because you've applied it to all different areas of life,
Yep.
which is another thing that I love about it. I do have the 3 questions to ask you.
Yes. Yes.
But just before that, what is I feel like in terms of if there was a first kind of tip into expanding on this or how to just become more aware. Firstly, I just feel like you've already offered us that just in this conversation. So I feel like just this conversation, listening to this episode, that's a huge part of
Yeah.
recognizing this and that work. So yeah, thank you for that. And do you have, I know you're going to send the links to all of your things, so I'll put all of that in the description, but is there anything that you would guide people to in terms of a tip of what to do next? What do I do with this information?
I would really recommend starting to track your full cycle. So using that free course that I have is really helpful because I have like a written tracker that you can print. It's like a circle and it has lots of days and you can do like little notes and
I
then you
gotta
can
love
look at
it.
it. Yeah, it's like a month at a glance tracker. It's great. I think that that's the first piece because now you have this understanding of like, okay, what do I expect during the different seasons? What are the strengths? What are the shadows? And then applying that to your own cycle because you're going to have a unique experience that's going to be unique to you. Like my cycle is going to be different to yours. And then you're going to have, like I said, like anytime I have really bad period cramps, I know it's because I've been doing too much. I've been too stressed.
Mhm.
Like you'll learn your own patterns. Like I don't need to do this anymore because I know my cycle in and out now. But for a while, whilst I was learning my cyclical nature, I used that written tracker for a year. And sometimes I'd slip, and it was often in the inner summer where I would forget to do my journaling
Okay,
because I
that's
was
good to
too
know.
like outward focused.
Yeah, that's good to
But
know.
that's really the first piece is from, and then I do have a course where I go deeper into the different seasons and the strengths and applying it into different areas of our life. If you did want to do a deeper dive.
Yeah, so people can check that out as well.
Yeah.
Honestly, I could talk about this for hours, and you're so not only knowledgeable, but I feel like the way that you've explained it is I can follow it. Do you know
Yay.
what I mean? I can follow it. And I think you're really good at just relating it to daily life.
Mhm.
It didn't, it wasn't too like, oh God, I can't follow this. Like, so I
Right.
loved it. So I'm going to ask you the questions.
Yes.
And the other thing I was going to say as well, because obviously I was saying to you just immediately, I'm like, oh my God, please, will you come into the membership? Um, but you have like so many different things that you offer as well, don't you?
Yes.
So that's something that I think people can come and check you out and they can grow. And I know that your whole thing is about connecting back to self.
Mhm.
And it seems like there's so many ways you're helping people to do that. So I think that's really
Yeah.
cool.
Thank
Yeah, I'm
you.
excited to collaborate a bit more. So,
Yay.
love,
Yes.
big question, I know. What does it mean to you? And if it has, how has it changed over the years?
I read that question and I was like, I don't even know how to answer this. And I was like, I'm just gonna trust what comes out of my mouth in that moment. Love to me is everything. It really everything comes down to love, I believe, and cultivating love in all areas of your life, whether that is self-love, which I think is so important. I remember when I was first new to my personal development journey, learning the whole like thing, like how can you love someone else if you don't love yourself? And that really hit me back then because I had no self-love. So I think it all starts there and really learning to love yourself so that you can allow that love from others to come into. And then finding love in everything you do, your friendships, the activities you do, taking moments to appreciate the beauty around you and just allow love to permeate through everything you do.
Do you remember one of the first, I don't know, like things that really connected with you with self-love?
It's really just starting to learn about who I was and accepting myself for all of me
Yeah.
instead of trying to be something or someone or following what everyone else's goals were, like really just connecting back to yourself, back to me and being, well, who am I?
Yeah.
What really matters to me? And how can I accept myself for all of me? Because again, polarity, we have good, we have bad. It's all in us.
Mhm. Love that. Great answer. Great answer. And I know it will resonate with so many people listening. What about, so love can be polarities, can be that's really been a theme here, can be the most amazing thing and it can be the most painful. So when love throws you off, how do you continue to navigate life?
This is where the strong mindset comes in.
Mm.
Developing a strong mindset so that when love throws you off and when it is challenging and you're going through heartbreak and you being left or you feel like you're unlovable, it's coming back to cultivating that strong mindset so that you can ride that roller coaster and remind yourself that you can do this. You get given what you can handle,
Mm.
even though you may feel like at that moment you can't. Like I remember I went through a bit of a dark night of the soul at the start of this year, and it was literally 1st of February, something big happened, and I literally felt in that moment, I can't take this any longer. Like this is too much. I can't bear this. And it was in that moment when I hit that rock bottom of that situation that I was then able to rise again. Because that rock bottom made me look at myself again and be like, well, what's truly happening here? And who am I? And what do I need to be able to move through this?
Mhm.
Yeah. I don't know if that answered the question or not, but
Fully answered the question, and it brings it back to that roller coaster. It doesn't dismiss that we
yeah,
go through rock bottoms. But like you say, I love that I can't remember the exact word you used, but something about we get given what we can handle. I
yeah,
think if you can remember that when you're, yeah, rock bottom, this, like, yeah, it can keep you going.
yeah. It is, and it is just remembering you have overcome challenges in the past. You can do it again.
And it's going to pass.
Yes.
Yeah.
This too shall pass.
This too shall. You get to go back to any age and teach yourself a lesson in love. What age are you going back to and what are you teaching yourself? And you're not allowed to say no regrets or that you wouldn't change a thing.
I would go back to the age that came to mind was 7-year-old me, and teach myself that I am whole and I don't need to be anything that I'm not, and that I could get to just love myself for who I am.
Mm.
Yeah, that would be the age that I'd like to go back to. And just again, it starts with that loving yourself so that
Self,
you can then attract also the secure relationships.
exactly, but it is that self-acceptance.
Yeah.
Kat, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. This has been so
I
fun. It's been a
know,
while since I've talked about the cycle in such depth. So
it's
this
been
is great.
amazing. Yeah, I actually can't wait to share it. Thank you so much. I will link to you. What's your Instagram
It's
or website?
it's Coach Kat.
Coach Kat. And yeah, I'll link to all of the things that you've said so people can find you.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, just thank you for sharing your wisdom. And I'm really excited to work a bit more with you.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been so fun.